a major theme that's emphasized in our working guide is the need for collective action to defeat corruption. And if you use the term collective action more loosely, there are different types of it. One is within the business community between companies. Another is between business and government, private-public partnerships. And a third is between diverse stakeholders in what the Auditor General calls the accountability ecosystem, such as civil society, law enforcement agencies, and higher education institutions. Our panelists all have important perspectives on collective action. Busi is the CEO of Business Leadership South Africa. Martin is the executive chair of Rothschild and Company, but I think he is more recently better known for chairing Business for South Africa, B4SA. Neal Froneman, his day job is CEO of Sibanye-Stillwater, but he also serves as the joint business lead of the Joint Initiative on Crime and Corruption. And Dion Shango, as the CEO of PwC Africa, has important perspectives on the role of auditors in that accountability ecosystem. So the question that I'd like to ask the four of you is, can you share your experiences and insights about collective action? Let me start with Busi, and then move to Dion, and then move to America, and ask Neal, and finally Martin. Busi.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Gideon, and good evening, everyone. So I think you correctly put it, that I guess when we're looking at what collective action can be taken, let's agree that there isn't a one-size-fits-all, neither is there a silver bullet to try and deal with the scourge. So I think we need all the interventions that we can to put in place to ensure that we can really deal with the issue of crime and corruption. So I guess from where I sit, my experience and the insights I'd like to share is, firstly, the decision, very deliberate and intentional decision that was taken by BLSA, CEOs of big businesses in this country, to take a very clear stance, against the state capture project. Back in 2016, height of the state capture project, I think it was clear for us as the business community that we are going to have to somehow meaningfully get involved. We can continue shouting from the sidelines, but this thing is not going to go away. So what does business actively getting involved, look like? And it was that conversation which led to a decision to make our companies sign an integrity pledge. Integrity pledge, which basically says that as an organization, you are going to conduct your company in an ethical manner. You are going to take a zero tolerance to corruption. And when there is corruption in your organization, you are going to decisively deal with it. And it was this integrity pledge that enabled us, to therefore suspend companies when they were found wanting. I think which was brilliant, because it enabled us to have a conversation with organizations to really look at what happened. You force them. And I was at Stephen Van Coller's EOH business case this morning, where they've done a brilliant job, of looking at what went wrong, but documenting it as well. What went wrong within EOH? What interventions needed to be put in place to make sure that they correct what went wrong? What institutional reforms needed to be done? What reparations they actually needed to do, and so forth and so on. So it allowed us to have that conversation. Very important conversation. And I think it therefore allowed us to be very unequivocal as the business community about where we stand on the issue of crime. And we definitely did that. And I think the second way in which you lean in, into the collective action, if you agree, Gideon, that business is the only social partner with disproportionate resources, we have to answer the question of how do we utilize our disproportionality to deal with the ills that we face as a country. And I think this is where we therefore use our skills, our capability, our resources, to lean into this issue. We, for instance, have a partnership with the NPA where we have allocated about 20 million rands that have been set aside to provide the resources that are required for them to effectively prosecute. And that relationship is in progress. We have a partnership with the South African Police Service where we have now installed technology in the form of devices in about, I think at the moment, we're piloting it, 200 police vehicles, which enables them to detect, and obviously this technology is, a lot of fancy things put into it, but it allows them, as they do what they do, patrolling and whatever the case is, they can detect a stolen vehicle when they come across it. And I think in the 2 weeks of piloting, 8 vehicles have actually been stopped and recovered, and I think about 10 suspects have actually been apprehended. So we are looking at how we can actually, roll that out on a much more larger scale. We have tried to have a conversation with SARS, and the commissioner was actually very willing to look at how the business community can help in terms of dealing with the issue of illicit trade. For instance, we have actually looked at having a conversation with National Treasury, and we have had a conversation with National Treasury. We're sitting here as a country today precisely because of crime and corruption, grey listed, which is yet another nail, in our coffin, as South Africa. And we've spoken to them at the beginning of the year to say, how do we actually utilize our skills as the private sector to look into this issue of beneficial ownership? How do we actually help you to implement registers, around beneficial ownership? Because we know that FATF has said, it is a huge problem, that you actually don't have this in place. So there are those ways, in which we are actually leaning into this. And I think there's actually going to have to be more, and I think Neal will obviously talk more about what we're doing from a Business for South Africa perspective, in as far as the government business initiative is concerned.
Right. Thanks, Busi. Dion.
Thank you, Gideon, and thanks for the very important question you started us off with. And in building on what Busi has said, it's important for us to remind ourselves as to how we got here as a country. And in thinking about corruption, state capture, and all things negative, it's very easy to be lulled into a sense of believing that it's only a public sector problem. We, as the private sector, have to own our own role that we played in getting to where we are today. And I say that as one of the entities that were, in fact, found to have played or not played a role that we should have, much better, in trying to prevent state capture or corruption, as it were. The role that we need to play as a private sector is multifaceted, if you ask me. As Busi has said, this issue of corruption, of state capture, is far too daunting, far too complex to be resolved or addressed by only one particular actor or stakeholder in society. So more than ever, we do need to collaborate through structures such as the BLSA or BUSA. We need to find ways and platforms where we can all contribute positively in order to be effective in our respective roles. Now, in most organizations, and certainly in an organization such as my own, I strongly believe that it starts with culture and tone at the top. Yeah. For me, that is non-negotiable. So much in our country goes wrong simply by virtue of poor leadership that it is sad when you don't see the right type of tone or culture right at the top or the apex of the organization. And so this firmly puts a spotlight on the importance of leadership on all of us in the room today, in our small spheres of influence, regardless of where those can be, or where those are, to actually be the change that we want to become and we want to see. I think platforms and structures like today should be about, okay, right, so what can we do that will be positive on a forward-looking basis? We know what's gone wrong. We know what we don't want to see be repeated. What can each of us collectively, individually do in order to make sure that we prevent history from repeating itself? I often speak to people who are quite despondent in saying that, but Dion, as business, there's little we can do. I think by merely participating in these types of discussions, in these forums, that is doing something. It shows that all of us deeply care about this country. We still want to be here, live here, build a future here. And so we do have a role to play, that we create the type of future, the type of country that our children, grandchildren can be proud of. So culture, tone at the top, and just doing whatever we can to rebuild and to reinstill trust, for me, are crucial in terms of the role, the multifaceted role that all of us need to play.